Hello and welcome. You're joining us for the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority's third Facebook Live event. We're so happy that you're here, and our Bridge Authority commissioners and staff are looking forward to providing more information on tolls for the new bridge and answering some of your tolling questions. I'm Anna Merrim, and I'll be facilitating our conversation tonight. We'll start tonight's event with a short presentation from PFM, the financial advisor to the Bridge Authority. We expect this presentation to last about 10 minutes, and then we'll open it up to questions from all of you. Before we get started, I'll turn the mic over to our two bridge commissioners and two members of the project staff who have joined us so they can introduce themselves. Before I turn it over, there are a few additional things you should know. You can type your comments and questions in the chat box throughout this live event. We will be responding to your questions generally in the order in which they come. But if we start to see some themes around topic areas, we'll try to respond to related questions together. If you or someone you know is having technical issues with commenting or getting into the event, you can get help by emailing info@hoodriverbridge.org. Let us know how we can help and we'll respond to you as soon as possible. We are scheduled to end tonight's event at 6:30, although since we started a little late, we may go over a little bit if there are a lot of questions. If we do have more questions than we can get through, don't worry, we will continue to hold these events in the coming months, so you'll have another chance to ask questions. Finally, this event will be recorded for later playback, and we will work with Mayor Marlett to share it on the Hood River Project page and our YouTube channel as soon as possible. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Paulson so he can kick off introductions.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Grant Polson, and then this is Piper. I'm a commissioner on the Bridge Authority. I'm also on the chair of the finance group, and separately, I'm also a counselor at the city of Hood River.
Mike, I think you're next in our lineup if you want to jump in.
All right, sorry about that. Mike Shannon, project manager. I'm with HNTB. We are the owner's rep for the Hood River Bridge Authority. Carrie?
Hi, folks. My name's Kerry Witt, and I'm also with HNTB. I work at HNTB's National Tolling Group, and so I work with toll authorities and bridge authorities around the country on their tolling programs, both the infrastructure side and the finance side. And I've been in tolling about 35 years, including 18 years as the manager of that little orange bridge you see behind me. So tolling is what I do, and I am absolutely delighted to play a role in helping this bridge authority get a new bridge built in Hood River.
Hi, everyone. I, too, am a Hood River White Salmon Bridge Authority Commissioner and also the Mayor of White Salmon. Thank you all again for sticking with us as we jumped through some technical difficulties. But I'm really excited we're having this presentation tonight. I feel like the few Facebook Live events that we've already had, the top question we get and the thing we know is on everyone's mind is, what is the future of tolling? What is it going to cost me to cross this new bridge? So this is a lot of the work that we are working on right now as commissioners, and Commissioner Polson, who introduced himself earlier as chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, that team of commissioners specifically has already been a little bit in the weeds. So the nice thing about tonight is you're really getting a lot of information that the full commissioner board received just on Monday. And the goal here is to really give you guys a bit of a deeper dive of the details and the considerations of the toll, but at the same time reinforce that overall, the Bridge Authority has full authority when it comes to setting the toll rate and policy. It is the only entity involved in this project that will oversee and control the tolls. But that does not mean that it's full flexibility and that we have the ability to make a decision on tolling that doesn't take into account certain considerations. And a key one for us right now in the future of this bridge is the lending that we know we're going to need to close that final gap of the funding pie. And so that's where tonight we're really hoping to educate everyone. And again, this is stuff that all the commissioners just received as well, of what some of those considerations are that do constrain some of the flexibility when it comes to setting these initial toll rates. So with that, I'll send it over to Brad, who has much more of this knowledge and expertise in his headspace in working with PFM, and I will not try to butcher your last name. So I'll ask that you introduce yourself to everyone so I do you proper justice.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Brad Gilmino, I'm in the National Transportation Group for PFM Financial Advisors, and we are happy to represent the Bridge Authority in getting a critical piece of this financing.
Awesome.
Okay.
As we teed it up, why don't you jump into your presentation? And then again, as you are hearing this, feel free to add your questions into the comments. Anna and her team are going to be monitoring those, and our goal here is to really spend the smallest amount of time on talking to you and let you guys ask us. And then as you've heard through the introductions, have a lot of different perspectives here that can hopefully answer your questions.
All right, well, I'll get us going. The Bridge Authority has been doing a great job of all the necessary steps in order to deliver this much needed replacement bridge. We have a Progressive Design builder under contract. They're doing a lot of pre-construction activities, including updating the current cost estimate, which currently is at $520 million. I want to show you this pie chart here to give you a sense of all the work that our funding team has been doing, putting together to get as much sources from outside of this area into the project. And when you look at it, you see the first thing on the right is the federal side. We've gotten $220 million worth of grants. We were recently awarded a $200 million infra grant. This was a competitive program based out of USDOT that states across the country on their most important priority projects have applied for, and we were able to get that. This is a really big deal for a bridge of this size. Next, I want to show you the Washington and Oregon side. Each state has committed $125 million to this project. But as you can see with some of the white pie slices here, not all of that money has come through the legislative process as actual money that we'll be able to pull down. And that's really critical for the two legislatures during their next sessions to actually put that money together. And that will allow us to right size that last piece of the pie, which is that federal loan, the TIFIA loan that we're looking at to provide the financing. It's pretty typical. What we try to do on these type of projects is get as much funding as we possibly can. So we rely on tolls for as little as possible. And that way we have more flexibility going forward. In 2023, we did increase tolls at the Bridge Authority. And that incremental money is going directly into an account which we need to secure that federal TIFIA loan. So in order to get the loan, we have to have a reserve fund. Since this project, the Bridge Authority's only revenue stream is toll revenues, we needed to build that up ahead of time in order to get that loan and show the commitment to the financial community. You know, the Bridge Authority was explicitly created to manage and operate the bridge, and all the toll revenues that are generated by statute and by federal law have to stay on the bridge. So these tolls won't be spread other places. Currently, the port is collecting toll revenues, and all of that money is going for operations and maintenance of the existing bridge. What we know has to happen is we need more revenue in order to be able to sell debt, to be able to bring in some more financing. So the uses that we're looking at here are operations and maintenance. You have to start with that. Debt repayment, your principal and interest from your loan, just like a mortgage that you would have at your house. And then we're going to have to fill up certain reserve funds since, you know, we don't have any real cash yet inside of the Bridge Authority. We need to make sure that we can buffet any slowdowns, economic downturns, or any unforeseen activities or happenings that might occur. And we'll also be accruing monies for the major maintenance needs of the bridge. You know, the bigger cycles every 10 years, 20 years, 30 years that requires a big injection of cash. So we have to balance the toll revenue with all of these different uses. So the toll bridge is a self-sustaining entity, which means we're not going to need any other revenue, any other support after we get our initial financing underway. Next, I want to talk to you a little bit about the toll financing process. You know, the Bridge Authority, as well as, you know, the cities and the states, you know, have the ability to issue debt. And they can do that with capital market bonds, or you can go through a federal U.S. Department of Transportation program that offers a really flexible, low rate loan product. And that's the route that we're going at this route on this project is we're starting that process with USDOT to talk about securing that TIFIA loan. This is a project financing, which means all revenues that the Bridge Authority has access to, that the investors would have access to, are strictly from the project. which means we have to have a really good understanding of what the traffic and revenue forecast is going to be. So you have to hire an expert firm. They're going to produce an in-depth report, study, analysis of the area, and that's going to be the basis on how much financing this project under a given toll rate regime can manage. But because we're asking people to give us their money, over a 35-year period, the lenders and the rating agencies are really going to scrutinize, one, that toll revenue forecast, two, our financial plan, and then three, the resolve of the management team in order to deliver that project. And that debt issuance requires a commitment to maintain the credit quality of the bridge, of the program, which means maintaining the tolls that you promised until you get to a point in time where you can reevaluate those. The TIFIA process is a little rigorous. And you see these 8 steps here. We're actually pretty in-depth. We've done a lot of the first 5 of these. Some of these steps will continue throughout the process, but what you have to do in order to get into the TIFIA process is you have to have that foundation, right? So we developed the plan of finance late last year. The Bridge Authority hired bond counsel to start writing the bond covenants, the financial disclosure documents that we're going to need. We have a preliminary traffic and revenue report, and we're in the process of upgrading that to an investment grade. We have to engage the rating agencies. The first step to enter that TIFIA rating, the TIFIA process, is actually to be able to go to the rating agencies, get an indicative investment grade rating that shows USDOT that this project is finance worthy, is credit worthy, and meets their criteria to lend. So we have those through 1 through 4. And just this week, we submitted our official letter of interest to the U.S. Department of Transportation. So this is like a pre-application, a whole bunch of detail. Basically, it is the gate that says we meet all the criteria for the loan. We have that rating. Now we can start the process to present the Bridge Authority's finance plan, negotiate out the term of those loans. So that's what we're going to be doing over the next 12 to 16 months. What we're all probably really wanting to hear is how do toll rates get implemented on one of these projects, right? So it isn't something that is just made up in a back room. There's actually a real process for it. There's a lot of considerations that you have been doing, and has honestly been ongoing now for quite some time. The Bridge Authority right now is in the process of establishing that official toll policy and those rates. But there's several factors, like I said, that go into this. The first is you have to set the toll rate high enough to pay for your operations and maintenance and those life cycle costs. So that is the critical piece. That's where tolls set are right now. But there is upper limits of what you can do. You can't raise tolls so high that people won't keep using the bridge, and then all of a sudden you'll lose revenue. So that's the upper bound. We are nowhere close to that. We're not considering going anywhere close to that, but that establishes kind of the other part. The middle ground, which is really important, is understanding that local community context. Who uses the bridge? What are the underlying economic conditions of that? And then the final piece is how much financing do we anticipate that we need? So the toll rates, for instance, would be very different if we were borrowing $100 million versus $500 million. So the real key for the policymakers and for the commissioners is to look over all of these factors, balance them out, look at the different scenarios and sensitivities that the traffic and revenue forecasters have put together to really figure out what is the best starting point, what gives us flexibility, and more importantly, what will the financial community buy off on? What will the credit rating agency say is investment grade? Since we're, borrowing money from someone, they really expect to get paid. And, we don't want to be the ones that's going to default here. So that is a little bit of a balance. And once you make those commitments to get it, you have to keep those commitments in order to keep your investment grade rating and be able to service your loan and have the respect in the financial community. The next piece of this is the toll rates. So I want to orient you a little bit. The light blue, I guess it's white actually, is for passenger vehicles, right? So these are your cars, your SUVs, your light trucks. And then we also show what, the 5-axle trucks are. When you look at the star column, this is where we're at today. This is the 2023 adopted curve. So the Breeze By customers with the transponders or the sticker tags pay $1.75, while If you're going to pay with cash or credit in the lane, you're going to pay $350. In order to get the financing, we have to raise toll rates over time. And we have to do that for a couple reasons. One, we know what's going on with inflation recently, and historically, there's going to be inflation. The cost side of the equation is definitely going to go up a few percent a year, right, with inflation. So we need to make sure our revenues also keep up with that. The second part of that is the financial community requires some amount of cushion or coverage that, hey, this bridge authority doesn't have taxes to rely on, right? They don't have any other access to new revenues. So we need to put toll rates up that they can weather some economic downturns. They can weather a recession, hopefully never weathering another pandemic, right? But that's where their minds are at. And initially, when you start one of these projects, you're required to be more conservative than you will have to be over time once you establish that history, once you show them that you're doing, you're making all your covenants and the bridge is performing well. So wanted to show you guys these rates, and they do go up every 5 years according to the current plan. Now, none of this is all based on the assumptions that we had to put into the current financial plan. So we base these toll rates on the traffic and revenue study that came out, the scenario analysis that we did, and a logical range of TIFIA financing that we might need. The last piece we want to talk about is how the actual road is going to operate, and what are you actually going to see when you drive across the new bridge. There's going to be kind of a major change inside of here. There's going to be no cash collection once the new bridge opens, similar to how the current bridge is tonight in the overnight hours. The reason for that is multiple. One, it's a lot safer for cars not to have to slow down and stop. You don't have to manage some of the staffing considerations. You don't have to transport large amounts of coins and cash in and out of your facility as well. And it has that free flow of traffic that everyone can continue to move on. Folks that set up that BreezeBuy account, they do get a discount from the cash and video rate. So in the future, what we're going to start to see is that all folks that come through the bridge, you're not going to have the option to pay with cash inside the lanes. The BreezeBuy customers will automatically get deducted out. One of the reasons they get that discount is because it's a lot cheaper and easier to collect that money and instantly have that back into the Bridge Authority's account. Versus if you are a video customer, we're going to take a picture of your license plate and you're going to have the option to go online and pay it, or we will send you an invoice and you can pay it afterwards. So those are the two major components of how we're going to operate this bridge when it opens. And inside of that toll policy, which being developed, they'll show you all the different vehicle classifications. We are charging by the axle. So as you have more axles, if you're pulling a trailer, you're going to have a slightly higher toll rate. The revenue collection methods, we just talked about that with video, and then also having the BreezeBuy, and then those different toll rates and how those are going to look over time. So this presentation was basically built to give you guys the foundation and provide you with some of the information and the data, and we're looking forward to transitioning to the Q&A period.
So much, Brad. Appreciate all that information. I know it's a lot of new information that the Bridge Authority also just received. So you're getting it in real time, everyone, basically. So I'm not seeing any questions from our audience yet. And so I will jump into some of our questions that we have for commissioners and staff. First off, this might be something most people are interested in. When will toll rates be finalized for the new bridge? And let's see, is that something maybe that Commissioner Paulson, you might be able to answer?
Yes. We're working on toll policy right now. Rates themselves, when by finalized, what do you mean finalized, and in which time frame?
Sure, yeah, and I know it's a moving target, and there are different sets of tolls. So I think if I were using the bridge, I would want to know hey, so the new bridge is opening in 2029. when am I going to know how much I'm going to pay the first time I cross that bridge?
Sure. Sure. So we have the assumed rate, which is the current rate in between now and opening day, which is the same. It is assumed that on opening day, if everything goes as planned, as forecasted, as budgeted, and we're able to receive funding in the manner in which we received, build the bridge in the budget in which we forecasted, we, according to the TNR study, we assumed that we would have a small increase to the tolls at that point, as mentioned during our presentation. And we would have that policy decided on here pretty quick, and that would be required to cover our financing needs as well as operations, maintenance, and that sort of stuff. And we would have all that pretty well decided here pretty soon. We're going to have another Bridge Authority meeting in a couple weeks on the Monday, and then we meet every Monday, or every twice a month on Mondays. And so I would imagine that at one of these meetings, that's when we would bring it up and decide at that point when the rate itself would be decided on. But I don't want to say that it would be decided on and set in stone at that point, because the authority has the authority to change rates over time. And when you're modeling or setting rates over time, everything is just an assumption or forecast over time. So if we're able to deliver a bridge under cost, within budget, and exceed expectations, then we have more flexibility there. So I don't want to necessarily promise something and then hold everyone accountable and says, oh, Grant said this, and this is what it's going to be no matter what. Because there are far too many assumptions that we all are working within over time to give someone a definitive answer to that question today for a question that may come up again 5-10 years from now.
I think I could add just a little bit also to reassure. And the reason why we wanted to have this conversation now is kind of back to what we were saying at the beginning. The authority is the only one that has the authority to set the toll. But knowing that we are seeking a federal loan, there certainly has to be the understanding and terms in place in advance of that financing being issued. And so that comes backwards a bit into this work that's on the horizon about to assure our lender, and based on the traffic and revenue study done by Washington State a year or so back, with all the known information at this time and their conservative calculations, those numbers that were shown earlier, kind of where we're tracking on projections, knowing our rating, which did we share our rating? I feel like it's very on point at the end of a school year to share report card grades, and we were a
investment grade.
Yes,
Yeah.
a triple B minus.
Triple B minus.
So all of that, and back to what Grant was really reinforcing here, is that the numbers you're seeing are really the floor. That is the lowest. We're trying to get to the lowest we can get to meet all of those demands based on conservative estimates about the future. But as different things change, and that's why it's so critical right now that we continue to advocate for this project at the state level, because if that portion of the pie is minimized and we're surprised by the traffic and what is crossing the bridge in the future, it is certainly something that can be revisited. But a lot of right now is about that assurance with the lender that we can deliver and are a reliable entity to finance with.
Thank you, Marla. Thank you, Grant. Appreciate that. So it is fair to say that the toll rates for the new bridge will be finalized sometime between now and 2029.
Yes.
And I know this is always of interest to everyone. Be overseeing the account with the toll revenue. Let's see, is that maybe a question? It seems like a Bridge Authority question. So Commissioner Paulson, I'm going to kick it over to you again as the committee.
Yeah, the Bridge Authority oversees all of the accounts having to do with all the financial accounts, all of the statements, all of the monthly, everything having to do with all of the toll accounts, all of the bank accounts. Yes.
Great. It's It's nice to have a quick and succinct answer. So I'm sure people appreciate that. And this is a question we've gotten from folks before. And it sounds like it may still be this may be a decision that hasn't been made one way or the other yet, but I think people would be interested to know where the authority is at on this topic. Will bikes and pedestrians need to pay a toll? And maybe, you know, what about public transit? Commissioner Keithler, do you have an update for us on this?
Sure. I'll try to keep it succinct, but as of right now, no, we are not anticipating that bikes or pedestrians would be paying a toll. In terms of how we handle special groups of users on the vehicular side, like public transit, that again will be a policy decision that is made by the commissioners in the future. And I would say too, I think a lot of our analysis right now is about it at a minimum matching what's being done for the current bridge in terms of what rates may be factored in for special users.
Appreciate that. And so we have a first question from an audience member. Thank you. Great to see everyone here. Thanks again for following us over. If you're just joining, we really appreciate your patience as we had some technical issues over on the project, the Hood River White Salmon Bridge Replacement Project page, and Mayor Keithler was kind enough to let us take over her page. So we really appreciate that, and we appreciate you coming over and finding us here. So thank you for the question. The question is, will there ever be a commuter breeze-by rate? And so I'm not personally familiar with the term commuter breeze-by rate. Maybe Carrie, are you familiar with that term? And could you
I've heard this
potentially
term. I
shed
think
some
it
light?
might be a community. Carrie, jump in, and then I might have some context to this
Well,
stuff.
I think what we're talking about here, and certainly the listener can chime in on the chat if I'm not answering the question they're answering. But many authorities do have what they call commuter rates, which is a discounted rate for people who cross more than a certain number of times. It's like a frequent user discount. If somebody uses the bridge more than 30 times in a month, or more than, typically they'll say 22 times, which is how many weekdays there are in most months, then there might be a lower rate. And there's an almost infinite way to structure that. And certainly, within the boundaries of the toll revenue that's needed to support the financing, this commission will have the latitude to discuss that. And the TNR study will take a look at potential impacts of programs like that.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner, did I touch on what you wanted to
Yep.
think about there?
Yeah, same lane I was going to go in. So perfect.
Great, thank you. And I just want to encourage everyone to post any question that you have right there in the chat, and we will try to answer it for you. Let's go back to my list for a minute. Will locals or low-income bridge users receive a discount? I wonder, Mayor Keithler, if you might be able to address this question. I know it's been a topic that's important to you and your constituents.
Definitely. And, again, as this authority formed in July, the full 12 commissioners, 6 voting and 6 alternates, really spent a lot of time thinking about kind of our mission, values, and objectives and overseeing this bridge into the future. And equity is certainly one of them. And so I think back to what Carrie was just saying, because the commuter breeze-by idea or feedback requesting that to be considered certainly came up when we were working with the Port of Hood River on the increase that they've placed on the current bridge to help our project build reserves. So that's another example of the considerations in this future toll and revenue study that'll be done, or traffic and revenue, sorry, that will be done of what those different types of programs would do to the overall numbers. And I think once that data is there, those are then the programs and considerations that the commissioners need to take into account in setting future policy and probably prioritizing which groups or which users they want to make sure are considered first or as a priority group. And again, right now, the current bridge certainly has different groups that have discounted rates, but we have heard, and I think it is top of mind, and we are aware that there are certain users that have very high use of this bridge, and that it's a majority of Washingtonians that are most of the trips across. And so that commuter idea has been talked about, is kind of in our orbit. Same with our lower income households. We are aware of the burden as the tolls increase. And I think what's really needed at this point is more informed data of just what it looks like, how we can try to carve out those populations and determine through the formulas how that would affect some of these future projections.
Thanks so much. Appreciate that. Seeing no questions from the audience, and again, I just want to encourage everyone, if you have anything you've wanted to ask, whether honestly it's about tolling or just about the project in general, we'd love to hear from you. But seeing none right now,
I'll raise my
I want-
hand. I have
Oh,
a
sure,
question.
yeah.
This was touched on Monday in a little bit more detail, and I found it interesting. So I guess selfishly, I'm going to throw it to Brad to maybe dive a little bit deeper as we were going through those slides and trying to keep that presentation tight. I found it interesting, kind of some of those conservative metrics and the way that they took some of our analysis that helped inform the increase that happened in September and whittled it down. Like, what are those factors they're looking at? We know that it's the only bridge, and it's highly unlikely that there's a competitive bridge nearby. But I wondered if you could maybe go through some of those things that they're looking at, or how they, through their formula, ended up reducing down based on what they were thinking about the future forecasting of traffic.
Yeah, so absolutely. So one thing that everyone has to look at now is, what did your traffic look like during the COVID pandemic months? And how did you, more importantly, how did you rebound from that? And then the third piece of that is, has your overall volumes changed? Have your traffic patterns changed at all? So obviously this bridge, like pretty much every facility in the entire country, had some drop-offs, right? We lost a few percentage points of traffic and transactions on an annual basis. It took a few years to actually get back to that point. So they're going to look really hard at how you were able to come through that. The second thing they're going to want to know is, what kind of traffic growth are you forecasting in these numbers? You know, they don't want you to be overly aggressive and assume that, hey, traffic and trips on the bridge is going to go up 3% a year or 5% a year. And is that realistic or not? How diverse is your economy kind of surrounding it? How essential of an asset is this facility? So these are going to be major causes to think about too. The other is, you know, your ability to get through any downturns or recessions. So they're going to take the revenue stream, they're going to start to stress them a little bit, right? And they're going to say, well, what happens if you have a 25% revenue hit? What happens if you have a 50% revenue hit? What happens if costs go up 10%? What happens if costs go up 20%? So we have to build a toll rate that can survive these stress tests. And they use these stress tests to give you that investment grade rating. Otherwise, you're simply not going to have to be there. And that's why we need a little more dollars than the exact amount of our operations and maintenance and, you know, the cost to repay the debt, is because we have to be able to weather some of these unforeseen events, either in your control or most likely outside of your control.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, you guys. We do have another question from our audience. And so they're asking if the Breeze Bypass will work on the new bridge. And it sounds like they're wondering if it will still provide that discount they see now. Is that something maybe Carrie, you could answer for us?
Well, I can start with the first part of that question was, will my Breeze Bypass work on the new bridge? The answer is yes. Breeze By uses a modern toll collecting protocol. In fact, interestingly enough, for such a small, relative to other toll agencies in the United States, relatively small facility, yet the current bridge is using the latest technology. Toll agencies around the country, including all toll agents in California, are just now in the process of upgrading to what's called the 6C protocol, which is used in Washington as well, will be used in Oregon, and the Port of Hood River has been using that for many years. So the first answer is, will my Breeze By work on the bridge. Yes, it will. I would also add that the plan is for your breeze bypass to eventually work on toll bridges elsewhere in Washington and in Oregon. And if California ever comes to the table and decides to be interoperable with other states, it will work in California as well, and ultimately, hopefully, anywhere in the country. So the current toll rate schedule that is being used as the entry to our analysis for the TIFIA lending shows a significant discount for people using, you know, the breeze by compared to people who don't have a pass and will have to use the video tolling. So currently we're looking at the current toll rates, you're actually getting a 50% discount for using breeze by. And the new toll rates similarly are almost a 50% discount for using breeze by. And you can see the assumptions assume that will continue all the way through 2051. Breeze by will always be significantly less expensive. As Brad pointed out, the reason for that is it is the most efficient transaction for the agency. It is the least expensive transaction. We read the transponder. We already know who you are. In fact, you have a prepaid account. You already have a certain amount of money there, and we just debit that account, as opposed to the video tolling, where you drive through the toll plaza. We have to figure out who you are, and then we have to mail you an invoice. Then we have to process that invoice and take your payment. In some cases, you know, deal with a paper check. All of those things cost the authority money. So to reward the people who are using the most efficient toll collection method for us, we can offer a significant discount.
Thanks, Carrie. And commissioners, did you want to chime in on the future of breeze by at all?
Well, I peeked over into the Facebook, so I feel like this question, sorry, Anna, it might be next in your queue, but it ties right into what Carrie was just talking about. And knowing that there are other systems like in Washington State, the Good to Go, is there a consideration, or what would be the logistics of syncing also maybe to, on the Washington side, a tolling system that's used on other bridges throughout the state, and similarly in Oregon, if other bridges go in that direction, what kind of interagency coordination is needed? Or is the technology there where breeze by and these other like Good to Go can all be scanning through the same type of codes that are on these digital scanners?
So it's a multi-part question. The technology, the equipment, the hardware that is in your car and the hardware that's in the toll lane that actually interrogates your tag and gets the information from your toll tag.
Interrogates.
I'm sorry. Anyway, the physical equipment is the same. So when a Good to Go tag goes through the toll plaza at the current Hood River Bridge, it gets read. It's just that it's quickly determined that particular tag does not have an account with the Port of Hood River, and therefore that transaction is discarded, and we rely instead on a license plate image. But so it's not a technology issue. It's an issue of settlement of transactions in the back office, and we're already looking at doing that. And you know, an example that anyone who has traveled in the East Coast knows that I think there's 19 states now that are interoperable on an Easy Pass system. A similar system is developing on the West Coast for California, Oregon, and Washington. And soon, you know, I would predict within 5 to 7 years, being a national tag. But yes, the reading of the tags is not an issue. There's not a technology roadblock to that. It's all just interagency coordination and agreements. And we're very close to that. I would say a couple of years away from Oregon and Washington accounts being interoperable on this bridge.
Thanks, Carrie. I wonder, Brad, if we could stop sharing the presentation just for now, and we could bring it back up, especially those toll rate assumptions, we could bring it back up later. But I think it's sort of nice to be able to see everyone's faces a little bit larger on the screen for everyone. Next question. Oh, so it seems like the person who asked is maybe didn't quite hear it.
Well, I think there's two things there on the Good to Go. So moving to that technology and those interagency agreements to capture the current toll on the current bridge would be something over at the Port of Hood River. But it sounds like, based on what Carrie's outlining, and also makes me think about some of the considerations through our committees, that we can be taking this into account so that quite likely the day the new bridge opens in 2029, those agreements or that coordination between the three states is already there, and it could be seamless for the new bridge. But any change in the infrastructure of how tolling's captured between Good to Go or Breeze By right now would be over at the Port of Hood River and through their commissioners and their administration, not through us on the New Bridge Authority.
Thanks, Marla. I want to stay on this track with Breeze By while we're on it. So I'm gonna jump ahead to a new question. How possible is it that Breeze By rates will be significantly higher than that ground floor estimate shown earlier, like into $5, $10 per crossing? So people are wondering, you know, how high could these tolls get? I think Brad, are you able to answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, you know, extremely high tolls, I would say, are very unlikely, right? It just doesn't fit the context for the communities that this bridge serves. If all the funding comes in, there's really no reason to move any higher than the current levels. The only thing that would start to impact the toll rates, and while they're not set yet, you know, I think we have a good understanding that that's approximately the right level to produce the amount of financing we need to deliver this bridge. If the construction costs came back significantly higher, if if the construction came back higher, or lost my train of thought here.
I think if the state money doesn't come through, Brad,
That's
that's
the other
probably the
piece.
most likely
That's what I
scenario.
meant to
Yes.
say. If the state money doesn't come through, we have to find a gap somewhere. Now, we're not just going to immediately go to the toll, right? That's not what we're going to do. We're going to start to shake all the other trees that we've been shaking the whole time and say, hey, look, something has occurred. We need other folks to start to step up, because on the local side, they have already stepping up to the plate with the higher tolls that there was implemented last year. So we don't know that tolls would have to go up. We might be able to find additional funds. We have additional federal grant applications in right now that could potentially solve that issue as well. So the first question is not going to be, well, let's just move the tolls up. The first point of action is going to be, let's find some more funding dollars from other sources. And then only then would we have to see what would that look like. And then obviously the board and the local community would have a lot of opportunities to state the case for whatever toll rates they think is sufficient.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this recalls to me the conversation in our communities many years back when this project was getting revived about either staying in the lane of it being a public infrastructure project or considering a public-private partnership. And we chose this direction of being in the public infrastructure space because it is where we keep local control on making sure that the toll is as low as necessary to do the job that it needs to do. And it's not giving profit to a private partner or someone who's seeking a return on a key piece of our community's need. So, you know, we talked about the floor earlier, but that really is the emphasis here, is that trying to find that number that is going to appease the lenders and assure them that we are a trustworthy and credible partner to be financing with. But it also reinforces why we are still so committed and outspoken about the need to see the state level commitment that we've always kind of envisioned from the beginning, that fair portion coming from both Oregon and Washington to match what we've been successful at getting at the federal level, so that we really keep this loan as small as possible. But, you know, ultimately, the factors that we showed earlier in these slides are the only factors. The only job of this new government entity is this bridge, maintaining it and planning for the future new one, for the next generation, for Grant's grandchildren, or probably great-grandchildren, which, as you can all see, is far, far away. But yeah, I want to reassure everyone that really, I think the focus here is about finding out that floor, not looking for a range, but really trying to stay as low as possible for our communities, while also meeting the needs based on the information we have now through the credit process and as we're pursuing this loan.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do realize we're over time, but we did start late. So if if you guys are all up for it, I have one more question from the audience that I'd like to address. This person's asking, will you consider a toll discount for senior citizens? And I know this kind of dovetails with a question we asked earlier about low income discounts and things like that. So Commissioner Keithler, would you like to address this as it's kind of in the same vein?
I can't, but I feel bad because I keep jumping on Grant's world. So Grant, but what I would say is it's very much the answer we gave earlier. You know, there's certainly these groups that have come up and been identified in conversations already. And I think really that'll probably go through the Funding and Finance Committee to fine tune the special users that we want to take into account. So it's great to have the feedback right now of, you know, can senior citizens or older residents be included in that? We've certainly had other input, not just about low income users and public transit, but you know, EV cars, other things have come up. But again, it's really all going to come back at this point to what we can support, knowing the criteria that we need to meet for the financing. But that is part of what is being anticipated in this next round of study, is doing some of these different calculations.
Thank you. And Commissioner Paulson, would you like to add to that?
No, Marla said it succinctly.
Great. All right, we don't have any other questions in the chat right now. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Commissioners and staff are, unless you have any other questions for the experts we have on here tonight, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up if that's okay. I just, again, want to thank everyone for bearing with us as we navigated some technical difficulties. And we really hope that this was beneficial for you and enlightening, because there was a lot of new information here today. And I hope that it was helpful. And we do have more Facebook Live events in the future. Hopefully we figure out the technical difficulties. I think Facebook may have changed some settings, so we'll have to figure those out for next time. But we hope you'll join us again next time. And we're hoping to introduce, so for our next event, we're hoping to introduce Hewitt, the design builder for the project. And so hopefully you'll join us for that and get to know that team a little bit more. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Keithler to close us out for the night.
Well, again, you know, obviously echo Anna, and thank you all who joined. And this will live on the Facebook page for the project, so certainly a good resource. And again, we really just wanted to give deeper context to some of the slides that were also shown on Monday. But if this is of interest or you think of other questions, don't hesitate to reach out through the Facebook page and the email that's available there for our project team. And the other thing I would say is, Grant mentioned it earlier, but our meetings are on the 2nd and 4th Mondays of the month. They're in the afternoon from 2 to 4, but those videos are also stored on our hrwsba.gov website. And if not at our next meeting on June 24th, in the near future, the toll policy will be coming forward to the commissioners as it leaves that Funding and Finance Committee. So you'll kind of see this work in real time as it's making its way back to the full board for input. And we always take public comment at those meetings. So certainly if this piqued your interest, it's a good time to maybe check into those Zooms too. And I guess just to wrap out, you know, the one thing we said at the end, which really is so essential, not just our voices into our representatives in Olympia and Salem, but also yours. We still need funding from both states for this bridge. We're making really great progress and we feel the momentum, and it's allowing us to move forward into the design and construction. But it is critical, and the most critical reason is about the amount that we're going to pay on tolling. And so this is how we keep that number as low as possible, is making sure that our elected representatives at the state level understand how essential this project is for all of our communities and the long-term sustainability of being an affordable area based on our transportation needs. So I would definitely encourage you to reach out to your representatives. If you're in Washington, right now we're in the 14th district. And if you're in Oregon, the representatives for Hood River, Grant, your district, I don't know off the top of my head.
Helfrich and Bonham.
There you go. So, again, they're all accessible to all of us, and a reminder that this bridge is important. Your comments kind of validate our voices when we're telling them the same thing. So thank you all for supporting this project. And again, our twice monthly meetings are always a good place to come with any comments or ideas. If you have ideas on future topics you'd like to hear about, please feel free to reach out to us for that as well.
And then related to the safe funding, we do need to have the safe funding, our full funding committed and our full capital stack ready to go and lined up before we start construction on the bridge. We can't start construction unless we have our full commitment, our full capital stack ready to go. That's a requirement on our end. If we don't have that, it delays the project and thus makes the project more expensive. More expensive project means more expensive, potentially, tolls, debt, ramifications. So the more we can do, the more we can work together to reduce the cost of this bridge, expedite it, get it done in the timely manner that we all hope to strive to complete it in, the less cost it's going to be for everyone.
That's a good way to end. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us.
Have a good night. Thanks, everyone.